Hello and welcome to another Random Code stream. This is part four of this rework in Rocks to minimize the API that's created for expectations. So I did spend a little bit of time thinking about the thing that I don't think it caught me by surprise, but just more about how am I going to handle it in my code. And so I am going to spend some time this afternoon, tonight, maybe tomorrow, looking at this defaults. Was it the optional arguments to indexers? Was it if it's a default implementation? I really don't know off the top of my head. So I'm going to take a look at that in a little bit more detail, and then I will be able to figure that out. So in this stream, what I want to do is see what the indexer implementation is doing right now, what the changes I made, and then potentially start working on how explicits are going to work, explicit implementations. Because again, all this stuff works. It's just I'm reshuffling things around. And as I've said many times, some of the code within Rocks is gnarly. So let me get my music going on in the background. Okay, so what we want to do is when we're creating an expectation for indexers, we create a class, we get a reference to the expectations, all the arguments, we pass those in when we create an instance of this. We do the gets and the sets, and then down at the bottom we actually have the indexer syntax. So I think that was one thing that I'm missing. So where would that be? So here, wait, there we go. When we build the indexers, we create the class. We create the constructor with all the validation, I think. Then we build the expectations, which I believe, I may want to check this real quick. Where do we get to the name of it? Yeah, so we do a gets there. And then I think yeah, we need to change this and this. I thought I had done something where I said, hey, if it's sets or inits. Oh, that was in the property implementation. Okay. Let's get rid of this for a second. I end up bringing up so much that let's go to the properties. And if we go to the builder there, here we go. Okay, so this is here. So we want to put the name here. Yeah, this is where it gets all messed up with the default stuff, but we'll get to that in a moment. So this is the setter, and we put in name like this, except we don't need to put in all the parameters. Those are Right. And since we capture... No, we don't. Yeah, this is where it's going to have to change. Hold on just one sec. When we say build indexers and we build the class here, if we come down here, this is where we're passing in all the indexer arguments. Okay. So those get passed into this class. So I think that's one thing I'm missing. When I do this. Is in both the getter and the setter. The gets, you don't pass anything in. But we don't need to do this check here anymore. Right, so we're okay. This is setting on the handler all of the properties. But we're expecting them to be parameters. Now, these need to be this dot. Okay. So we don't need to do this check anymore here. And yeah, this can all get cleaned up. I know when Mitch watches this later that he'll probably go, oh my God, we need to really clean all this generated code up. Yes, we do. One thing at a time. Okay, so this becomes this dot and this dot. Okay, that actually works out. Okay, and then this is all the same after that. Now in the setter, I'm assuming we're doing the same thing here. Yes, so we say this dot and this dot. And when we use the name, we don't pass in instance parameters. What? Just one second. Anyway. Okay, so we have to do that here, but what we need to do is pass in the property parameter value is the actual type of Yeah, this is the trick that I do right now, where I grab the parameters, the last one. I don't know why I'm doing a take here. Well, I take all except the last one. We need to put the value parameter immediately after self, and then skip the value parameter by taking only the non-value parameters. Right. The value parameter is here. That's the last parameter. So the value parameter is this. So if I come back down here, this is a setter. I should be able to put that in here. I don't know if I remember if sorry, I'm distracted by something. One of my kids needs to go to the dentist, get some cavities addressed, and they get nervous with shots. So they're gonna take something to soothe nerves a little bit. So, but then I got to go pick them up later. So anyway, okay. So I'm trying to remember if this is actually going to pick up the value for assignment with all the parameters. It should. Or one way to find out. Okay. So we build this, we build this. If we go back to the property expectations builder, down here, we do this, we get this, we do this, new string. Okay. Might as well just run a test and see what happens. Again, simple test. Do the simplest thing that can work. So, indexers. And that's what we're going to try to mock. Let's have it produce an int. Doesn't really matter. And then we say that okay. So it should fail. Oh, I'm hitting the wrong key. Run it again. Fine. Okay, well, at least it's generating code. I don't know if it's gonna... Yeah, we gotta do the test log. Okay. So, let's bring all this up. Grab that. Do that. And now let's take a look at what it did. Okay, so it did the indexer expectations. Oh, we forgot a... Okay. So this has a string as an argument. So we need to capture that. Right. That works. We get the parent passed into it this. We forgot a closing brace here, so we got to fix that. And then we do a gets, because that's all it has. We should add a sets into this one just so we can see it. We do capture the name on the handler. That's correct. Okay, so let's put a sets on here. And then we also need to fix something. So with the... Is it this? Okay, so we build the indexers. We get all the parameters. And again, there should be a space after there just because we always are going to have one. Then we create the constructor, which we did. We get the throws if null, which is right for a string. Well, yeah, it does. Okay. And then we assign. We go back, but what we forgot to do is writer.writeLine. Close it off, and then just do a write line. Okay. Now we added in the setter, so let's see what it does this time. Okay. We're definitely gonna need to open the test log. Okay, so now what does it do? Well, we don't do that right. So let's, yeah, we need to indent back here. Okay. So that'll fix that. The gets, we don't put a line there. I'd like to, let's do this. Because this prints out the getter and the setter. In between the two, we want to say if property.accessors equals property next or property.accessors equals get in the init writer.writeLine. Because then we know we're going to do we know we did the get, we know we're going to do a set, So we want to have a space between the two. Again, it's not like critical for the code. Okay, so let's do that. I think that should put the right amount of space in there. Okay, so then what did I do with the sets? We pass in the argument of the value. That's right, because it needs to be an int. Yeah, we don't need to check on the setter. Damn it. Value parameter argument. What we need is the last parameter name. Okay, so if we come down here, all we need to do is say last parameter name, and then we don't for each this. Okay. So what that should have done now is come in here, and we don't check this, because that's checked up here when we do the constructor of the expectations. Handler 0, handler 1. This is wrong. This needs to be the set expectations parent. This will always be parent. And then also up here. We need to do it in the getter as well. Right, and those are the parameters we've captured, so that's fine. Okay. Whoops, what did I just do? I just put a random D somewhere. That ain't good. Okay, so this, we say parent. Parent, parent, parent. Okay. So again, let's clear this out. And then so what do we got now? Parent name, instructor, checking the name. Don't have to check the expectations because that's what we handle internally. The gets, we'll throw out the parent is. Actually, we should. We're gonna want to change the parent to. Let me put a note. The parent field in the generated expectation classes needs to have a naming context because parameters can have the name. Parent. So we'll get to that in a moment. I'll have to go back on the two I've already done with methods and then properties and indexers. Properties won't run into this because they only have something called values, so there will never be a collision with that. But there could be with methods and indexers, so I'll have to go back and fix that. For now, the gets... Oh. Why is there a random space there? Whatever. It's technically okay. I think you can have a comma here and that's fine. And it makes the code a little simpler. But it does look a little weird. But I think we now have the right syntax here. Oh, we don't need... Okay. These don't need to be index or arguments. These just literally need to be the name of the... Because on the this here... We do need to specify the arguments and their types, but not over here. We just need the name. Okay, so I think what we could do here is, unfortunately, I have to do another property. Oh man, we don't want the value one. Which you won't get from property parameters. That's right. Right. So property parameters, select parameter. So we need to do that. Put an @ sign in front of it and say parameter.name. There. Okay, so now that should change the test. Well, let's do it over again. I don't know why I opened up the performance profiler, but I did. Okay, so now what do we have? We have parent, we have name. We create it, we pass in the name. Name, this name, yep. And now that looks correct. So this now allows you on expectations, if I go to the code dump again, actually, if I go to program, this is now generating something like this. And then you would do a gets on it, and you get your adornments back, and everything works from that point on. Right. I think that's correct. All right, well, let's see what the make does, which, again, that should not have changed. All right, now failed. Why did it fail? What the heck? My mouse is like moving slow for some reason. I don't know why. All right, so we have some diagnostics. We have a lot of diagnostics. What are those diagnostics? Does not contain a definition for value. This is on line 50 of the generated code. Does not contain a definition for value. Oh, it wouldn't. Yeah, you're right. It's... Oh, and then I didn't change the member identifier. Okay. Those are fixable. Okay. So... Okay. So we do want to get every parameter. Yeah, because we're going against the method now, not the parameters on. Actually, well, we want to be a little careful here. Well, yeah, I want a 4. For var I is equal to 0, I is less than, except -1, I plus plus. Come on. And then we want to say var parameters that. And then after that point, we can do this. What this should do is not get the last one. So that should now fix that. Okay. And then when we do the actual indexer, I think the index member. I said member, oh, member implementation, not member identifier. Okay. Okay, so this is the spot where that's puking, and we don't want that. We do want to keep this assignment of the variable, though. So mock indexer builder and then mock property builder. Because we did the same thing in both, so we probably want to... This is now... Yeah. So we want to say is getter visible and is setter visible. And then I'm just going to grab this line of code. And then I don't think I need to do that now. Okay, and then we say is setter visible. We don't do that. But what we need to do now is in the getter is here. We need to actually, we don't pass in this anymore. But what we do pass in is the member identifier. Member identifier. And that would be in the getter. And now in the setter, we do the same thing. Yep. Okay, so that takes care of that. Try it again. So let's check that out. Yeah, so these only assign the name now. Well, okay, that's screwed up. Because in the setter, we also need to assign the value, but the value needs to come from... yeah, let's do that quick before I forget. So then here we need to have a line of code that looks like this. Because we're doing handler, new handler. Stop it. And then we close it off there. And actually... it's always going to have something called value on it, and we can say it's going to be the at value. And we got rid of the dangling comma here. Oh, this should be interesting. I think because it says the value on the handler is equal to, it has to be this value. I hope what am I currently doing? Here, these are the setters. So we put the value in the argument here, which is what we're doing above. And we're saying handler, its value is equal to the value. You notice we have the comma thing here too. So, value. Okay. I do like this though because it gets away from this little twisted thing I have to do where I have to put the value in the setter first. Because you could have default arguments. And this gets rid of that. So this should work. You just put the comma there. Just so that we're the same as before. Now what does this do? Still fails. Let's check the mock here real quick. Oh, I don't need to literally put in I just did this. That's the property and then the indexer expectations. That's that. Where did I just do this? Mock indexer builder. Yeah, it's not. Way to go, genius. Hi. So now it should show this. And it should show that. Now what does it do? Still fails. Well, if it's a diff, it can get to be quite hard to see what the diff is. So the best thing I usually do is I regenerate, which isn't the greatest because it takes a little bit of time. Okay. Now what? Still fails. Okay, we got 2 errors this time. A get or set accessor expected in line 105. What did I done mess up? Oh, yeah. We don't put the semicolons there. Come on, chat, help me out. Struggling here. Okay. So now if we come back here. Hey, there we go. There we go. All right, that is a good way to end the stream. So that is good. So we can now we've done that, but there's definitely work to do. We need to change the parent field. When we get to explicits, which I did not do today, we need to do that. There's this whole thing with defaults that I have no idea what's going on. I forgot about that. We need to make sure original expectations are not there. I think we have now definitely made sure that's true, but that could be wrong. So now the one thing I want to discuss real quick is when I get to a point where I think it's doing the right things with these default things, with its default implementations or default values for the arguments. If, I think explicits are working correctly, what I need to do is I don't want to update the unit test first. What I want to say is testing strategy. Run cogen tests. Now, if those don't show any issues, again, it doesn't mean they work correctly. It means that I built code that can compile. Then I want to update and run integration tests, because that will take a little bit of time, but hopefully not as much. And this should help me figure out like what rules I need to create to say, hey, if you want to change stuff, this is how you do it. So there will be a fair amount of tests there to change, but I'll fix those. If those run, then we need to update and run unit tests. Because if the integration tests run, then the unit tests will run. I just need to, because if I got the cogen tests to run, if I got the integration tests, because the cogen tests won't take any work on my part. I just run them. And what that should do is that's a really good smoke test to say, yes, that all built and there was no compile issues, hopefully. Then I can go to the integration test, fix up all the compilation errors because the API changed, and then run those. If those all pass, then this is the one that's going to take the most amount of time. But at that point, I'm pretty convinced that I got everything to work. I might have missed something that's not in the integration tests, but do show up in the unit tests, which would mean I got to find that and shore up the integration tests. Okay, so there's still definitely a decent amount of work here to do, but we are making progress. So that is the good thing to see. And again, I really want to make sure I've got as much figured out with the cogen stuff before I really get into changing tests, because these unit tests, like you just saw, they're a pain to update if I change something, and that's going to have a sweeping effect on like hundreds of unit tests. And again, I will not bore people watching me change string content, because that just gets to be tiresome. Trust me, it's very tiresome. If there's one way I could figure out a way to say, hey, go into all these tests and just automatically update the string content, but that would be potentially a lot of work. So again, though, I think we're in a really good spot. Now with the progress on this, but I'm not going to celebrate too much because there's definitely things we need to take a look at. So with that, I'm going to end this stream. I want to thank everybody who's been watching. If you haven't subscribed to the channel just yet, please do so. I would greatly appreciate it. If you've already subscribed, I appreciate you for doing that. The next time I do a coding stream, I don't know, maybe it'll be Thursday or Wednesday. I'm not sure. I do have to start shoring up all my demos for presentations I'm going to be doing in a couple weeks when I head down to VS Live Orlando. So I do need to spend some time on that as well. But I also want to keep moving on this. I don't want this to stop either. So I might do one on, again, random. I don't know, sometime this week. Want to keep moving on this. And the next work to do will be probably the parent field and the explicits and then the defaults. Those are going to be the big things to get done. And then once those are done, and I think I've addressed everything, hopefully I get through the testing strategy and that starts to show some promise. But again, I know this code base better and things can go off the rails, but we'll see. So we'll see when I do another random code stream. Also, just keep in mind, I'm going to be streaming more Silksong on Tuesday night around 7 p.m. Central. and Thursday afternoon around 4:30. So if you're interested in that, check that out. But for this stream, I am done. Thank you all for watching. Take care, and I hope to see you in the future.